Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today to kick off FedTalks 2020. And what a great first panel we have to begin with today. I'm FedScoop Editor-in-Chief Billy Mitchell, and it's my great pleasure to talk with two of the DOD's top officials in IT and AI, the Honorable Dana Deasy, CIO of the DOD, and Lieutenant General Michael Groen, Director of DOD's Joint AI Center. Mr. Deasy, General Groen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Absolutely. This is really exciting to have both of you sitting next to each other because I know you're both working on a lot when it comes to the future of the JAIC. Obviously, the JAIC's been around for several years, but I'm looking forward to hearing what's sort of next. But let's start with where we're at today. Obviously, Lieutenant General Groen has been in this role for about a month or two as Director of JAIC, and I'd love to sort of get a sense of how it's been bringing General Groen on board and what the two of you have been prioritizing in these early days.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start on that. So when General Shanahan announced his retirement, I remember sitting down in my office one evening and just saying, okay, write down on a piece of paper those things that we think are going to be important to whoever the next leader was. And the first and the foremost was obviously somebody who really understood the warfighter. I think we'll probably get into a further discussion today on that. And then, like any organization, JAIC has had the same sort of startup growth pains that you would see in any kind of VC. And so for me, the first thing was somebody that would know how to take JAIC that has kind of gone from this young startup, rapidly growing, to now needing to have real kind of discipline process put into it. And so for me, it was all about somebody who really could focus on the warfighter part of this, but some at the same time who would now know how to take JAIC and elevate it. At least that's what I was looking for. Now, what did I actually get out of that?
As far as you know, sir, that's what we're actually doing.
Excellent.
So that's great. But honestly, we are very compelled by the transformation of warfare, and then the necessary transformation of the way the department fights. And we are absolutely committed to making sure that we don't send our young, sons and daughters into a fight that with a disadvantage, right? So with information age warfare, coming into real being now, things that we have to pay real attention to, we want to make sure that we are transforming the department at that pace. And we're looking to facilitate, to enable, and to align across the department to make sure that we're driving the transformation to the greatest degree and at the greatest speed that the department can muster.
That's
You're not
great.
going fast enough. You still need to go faster.
Mr. Deasy, you mentioned, JAIC's kind of had a background as sort of a startup organization, and obviously it's not at that point anymore. It started to grow. It's no longer this tiny body. It's doing things across the department and has a number of mission areas that it's working in. So as it's continuing to mature and scale as a driver of AI transformation, I'd love to hear about the vision for this growth and the strategy to ensure that it's successful. In a sense, my question is, what does the future of the JAIC look like?
Yeah, it just literally, it seems like just yesterday that I remember us issuing the first memo announcing JAIC and sitting down with about 4 or 5 people who made up the entire JAIC organization. We couldn't even rub 2 nickels together to get a budget started. I think we stole a few desks inside the Pentagon somewhere. And that was literally how we formed JAIC. And I tell that story only because if you go talk to any young startup, they'll literally tell the stories of a few people sitting around and actually getting the thing going. And we went through that. I think one of the things that we've wanted to keep in our DNA is this idea that we want to hire a lot of diversity of thought into this organization, but yet do that in a way where that diversity of thought coalesces around a couple of really important themes. And this is to your point about, where do we take this in the future? So when we started, it was, we need to grab hold of some projects that can show people that we can be nimble, we can be agile, and we have the talent to give something that is meaningful back to the department. So we started in a variety of different places, but now as we've matured, we've started to say, that was great, the prototype, great to demonstrate, but now we really need to focus on what was the core mission all along for JAIC, and that was we have to figure out what is the role that AI plays in enabling the warfighter. And I've always said that Jake should be central to any and all future discussions in that place. So, I'd love to hear from your thoughts on how are we doing now, moving from working on a bunch of things to really getting focused on the future of warfighting.
Right. So I used the transformation word before, and transformation is our vision, right? It's a big job. We discovered pretty quickly that seeding the environment with lots of small AI projects was not transformational in and of itself. And so we knew we had to do more. And so what we're calling Jake 2.0 is a focused transition in a couple of ways. One is, we're going to continue to build AI products because the talent in the Jake is just superb. I mean, that's kind of my number one observation coming in. Just amazing people with amazing ability. Now we have to get their ability and their talent focused in the right place. We'll continue to do products, although we may not build as many models because we're really thinking about solution spaces for a broad base of customers, and that really gets us focused on enablement. There are, the application and the utilization of AI across the department is very uneven. We have places that are really good, and some of the services are just doing fantastic things, and we have some places, large scale enterprises with fantastic use cases, really could use AI, but they don't know where to start. So we're going to shift from a transformational perspective to start looking at that broad base of customers and enable them. And so how, kind of give everybody a step up. We create a rising tide, which lifts everybody's boat, so that now we can take advantage of, all of the levers of transformation. We can become problem pull, where an enterprise has an issue, and we'll let them pull us into that problem and then help bring solutions to that problem, for example. And we're going to continue to work with the services on cutting edge of AI and AI application, especially in the integration space, where we're bringing together intelligence and fires, or intelligence and maneuver, so the warfighting functions that have superb stovepipes. But now we need to bring those stovepipes together and integrate them through AI. So that's the kind of stuff that we're focused on now.
That's great to hear. I would imagine part of that rising tide, if you will, is the Joint Common Foundation. It's sort of an infrastructure that you guys launched recently that spans across the DOD to help services, other agencies with their AI applications. So I'd love to hear a bit about how that is going and what it does and how services are using it successfully.
When we started Jake, we said, what is the single most important thing that we'll look back on someday, that history will write about Jake? And we said it has to be about the Joint Common Foundation. I mean, Jake could never do all of the AI initiatives for the Department of Defense, nor was it ever created to do that. But what we did say was, people who are going to really roll up their sleeves and seriously start trying to leverage AI to help the warfighter, every day are going to wake up and they're going to say, where's that platform I go to use? Where's those tools? Where's those models that are already available to me? So at the core of Jake's success has got to be this Joint Common Foundation. And I know that since you've come on, General Groen, I think you guys have done quite a bit to move that on. And it might actually be helpful to kind of share and bring it to life. Where are we actually at now in making that real? Yeah,
great question, sir. So JCF is very real, really powerful. And you think from a department perspective, I mean, you can't have an AI-driven enterprise without a platform. And so there are platforms that exist. One of the things, though, that's a pretty significant need is sort of the idea, all of these disadvantaged users who don't really have a place to start. We can help them. And the Joint Common Foundation, the platform that we're building, is a starting point for disadvantaged users. And then we're going to grow it. So it's under construction now. We'll have some basic services, around, when we turn into fiscal or calendar year 21. But it's a MVP, a minimum viable product approach where we're building some basic services, a lot of native services from cloud providers, but then adding services to that. And where we hope to grow the technical platform is a place where people can bring their data, places where we can offer data services, data conditioning, maybe data labeling, and we can start curating data. One of the things we'd really like to be able to do for the department is start cataloging and storing algorithms and data. So now we have an environment so we can share data, training data, for example, across programs. How powerful would that be? Sharing algorithms. One of the things we've discovered is, the problems across the department that we can solve through AI, they cluster, meaning you can reuse algorithms across different applications. So we want to create an environment we can do that. And then the last thing I'll mention about the platform, because I think in the JCF, there's a soft services side to the JCF as well. So what I'm talking about there is things like test and evaluation best practice, things like how to instantiate an ethical foundation. I could talk for an hour on an ethical foundation and how that leads to trust in AI systems that we have fielded across the department. Contract access to contracts, advice for contracting if somebody needs to build their own contract. Like I said before, we want to think about solutions, and in a lot of cases, especially some of our more advanced consumers, all they need is like access to a contract vehicle. They don't really need anything else, so we can do that for them. Somebody else might need a complete AI readiness evaluation to see how their enterprise can benefit from AI. We can do that too, and we're going to do all that based on the platform as it rolls out.
People have said to me time and time again, why such a fixation on this joint common foundation? And I'll say, it kind of reminds me of the days when GitHub first started. And why it was so successful is developers and people who create things love to show off, love to share, love to make their work accessible. And that creates this flywheel of success. And so if we can figure out how to create, our joint common foundation in a way where people can come in, create these libraries, make them accessible to other people, I really believe it will have this multiplier effect across the department.
Yeah, that's a great analogy and a great way to put it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, though, thinking about a platform like the JCF, if not talking about the need for digital modernization across the DoD, things like cloud, data management, cybersecurity, and how that all plays into the move to AI. So I'd love to move to how this groundwork for modernization prepares services as they move closer to AI.
Each day as I work with General Groen and we talk about all the various challenges they have to solve for, and I think people sometimes don't appreciate it is truly a multidimensional problem. One day we're talking about the common foundation and the basic infrastructure you need, a cloud. The next day we're talking about how do you build the AI algorithms and push them out. And then that leads a conversation around command and control and communications and the resiliency of getting that out to the edge. And then we end up in this data conversation that's all about how are we going to feed the right data in to the common foundation for these algorithms. And then finally, we always end up with what are we doing to make this cyber resilient? So when we created the digital modernization, I think it was obvious to everybody, the parts were the right parts, but actually it comes to life. You actually see how these are codependent on each other is incredibly strong. Maybe you can go to a little more detail on how that actually shows up at the face of Jake every day.
Yeah, so all of the tenets of digital modernization, the things that are coming down the pike are awesome. They're timely, and they're absolutely necessary. When we talk about, the cloud strategies and, like actually building a department that's focused on generating data that it can use in decision-making. I'm really excited about software modernization because all of these things provide a platform for us to now layer on AI. Yeah. I think, a risk is, people sort of conflate digital modernization and artificial intelligence, right? That, well, if we have, JADC2, for example, as an empowered network, that we automatically get AI on top of that. And I think it's important to note, that JADC2 Foundation, the Cloud Foundation, the Modernized Software Foundation now gives us a platform so we can build AI. And so AI has to be a conscious application layer that's applied, leveraging the platform and the things that digital modernization provide. But when you think of it that way, holy cow, what a platform to operate from. So now we will really have a place where the joint force can effectively operate. And now we can really start integrating intel and fires, intel and maneuver, command and control. Just think about like the logistics enterprise, the combat logistics enterprise, and sort of the broad support enterprise. Maintenance, predictive maintenance on vehicles and weapons. I mean, it's just an enormously powerful thing. You can't do any of that without a platform, and you can't do any of that without those digital modernization tenets.
So as we wrap up, we have a couple more minutes left. I'd love to ask the two of you, looking forward into calendar year 2021, what's ahead? What are your offices working on respectively? Obviously, you both kind of oversee a large swath of DOD's IT and AI portfolio. So I'd love to get a sense of what we in this audience can expect out of DOD in this coming year.
Well, I think General Groen's going to know what I'm about to say here, because it's the conversation we have every Friday when we have our one-on-one. Where are we in digitally transforming the warfighter?
Mm-hmm.
When I meet with the C3 head, the cloud head, software modernization, cyber, when we created our logo for digital modernization, and we put the warfighter at the center of it, I think the rest of this year and definitely in the next year, as we talk more publicly about things like JADC2, I mean, it's going to become very crystal clear why we put the warfighter in the middle of everything, because everything we're going to do in digital modernization keeps pointing right back into, is this supporting, is this helping and enabling the warfighter in a different way?
Yeah. And so when you think about all of the things we just talked about, okay, now we're getting the plumbing and wiring into place, and now just enormous opportunities are available to us. And this is where I really get excited about warfighting integration, especially. The services are all doing fantastic things, and things that are necessary for kind of their domain or the things that they're most interested in. And that's great. We want to now start building on that to start bringing integrated artificial intelligence capabilities and a whole, if we're going to have like the whole force operating at the speed of machines, then we have to start bringing these artificial intelligence applications together into an ecosystem. And it has to be a trusted ecosystem, meaning, we actually have to know if we're going to, bring data into a fires capability, well, we have to know that that's good data. So how do we build an ecosystem so that we can know the provenance of data? We can ensure that the algorithms are tested to a satisfactory way, that we can comfortably and safely integrate data and decision-making across warfighting functions. That's the kind of stuff that I think it's really exciting, because that's the real transformation that we're after. Applying AI to small functional components of the force is really good. But where we're really going to get the magic is when we start automating broad swaths of decision, not just decision making per se, but command and control, and no kidding, presenting data to decision makers across the force in a really effective way. So I'm really excited about it. As I mentioned before, we're in nascent stages in a couple of areas. Things like test and evaluation. Test and evaluation is so critical. And there are just so few like real true experts in test and evaluation for AI. And so we've got to figure out, how do we scale T&E? How do we get best practices out there? How do we teach and learn from each other about how you make sure that you have trusted systems? Trust is going to be the watchword when we get to a level of maturity where we have AI instantiated in a lot of different places across the force. And so building, getting user buy-in and user ownership of data sources, of decision-making and decision flows, of what decision you actually need to make a decision. This is warfighting business, right? And I've said this before, I'll say it here for our listeners. you know, we can't think about AI as something that, you know, that's IT, you know, that somebody brings in for you. It's not a black box that some contractor sets on your desk. AI models your decision-making process, Commander, your data flows, Commander, your process and your good judgment for how you bring data into a decision. It just allows you to do it a lot faster, right? So that's what we're after. You'll start to see some of that stuff in 21, and then hopefully we continue to grow beyond that.
You know, I'll just end by saying, people will say, how will we know when Jake is successful? Is when the term Jake is used in conversations at all levels. When people will say, well, was that data run through Jake? Did those algorithms get pushed out today through Jake? Did you guys go to Jake and put that in the library? Did you go and look at the integration solutions from Jake? So when Jake, the term, that word Jake, starts to get used in the vernacular of people's day-to-day conversations, then I'll feel like the original vision that we put in place for Jake is really starting to be brought to life.
Fantastic. Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll look forward to everything you guys just mentioned and more next year. But for now, thank you guys so much, Mr. Deasy, General Groen, for kicking us off in FedTalks 2020. It was a great conversation, very fascinating, and I can't wait to catch up more in the near future. But for now, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it. And to everybody listening, good luck.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.